documented creeps in the heart of farm country Illinois, where the cornfields stretched as far as the eye could see. There was a chilling tale that still haunts me to this day. It all began with the death of my uncle, a man whose life had been a series of relentless hardships. At the ripe age of 80, he succumbed to pneumonia, but the true torment of his existence had little to do with that ailment. You see, one of his legs was cursed, slightly larger than the other, and it caused him excruciating back pain. Every day on his farm was a painful ordeal, one that eventually drove him into the arms of the bottle. He was a severe alcoholic, and his drunken brawls with friends and family were all too common. But the darkest chapter of his life unfolded in the late 90s. A dispute over a property line with his neighbor escalated into a horrifying suspicion that he had killed the man. Though the police brought him in for questioning, there was no body, no definitive proof. The neighbor's wife found her husband's blood-stained hat on the property line, but her spouse was never seen again. The town whispered in hushed tones about my uncle's guilt, and even our family, despite no formal charges, cut ties with him. I was one of the few who continued to visit my uncle. I never dared to ask him about the neighbor. I clung to the belief that he could not have savagely taken another person's life. After his peaceful passing, my family descended upon his farmhouse, intent on selling the property. I found myself drawn to the fields, collecting odds and ends abandoned in the farthest corners. And then I encountered it, a slouching scarecrow perched high on a crooked pole. I had seen it from a distance before, but up close, it was a grotesque marvel. The scarecrow wore a crude wooden mask, a burlap sack for a head, and an overcoat over overalls. Rusty hatchets dangled from its pant legs, giving the appearance of feet. Its hands, fashioned from broken metal rake tines, were a cluster of rusty claws. It was a fitting creation for my uncle. As I wrestled to remove it from its perch, the scarecrow emanated a sinister presence, a combination of wet straw, rust, and mold. The barbed wire cut my hands, and in frustration I knocked it down. It clattered to the ground, and a mysterious clinking noise echoed from within its chest. I reached inside, discovering a round, hard object nestled beside the makeshift ribcage. I couldn't help but be disturbed by my uncle's grotesquely clever creation. Dragging it to the fire pit, I intended to burn it along with other debris, but the heavens opened up, showering me in rain. I left the house, locking it up for the night. Upon my return the next day, I expected to find the scarecrow in its place on the burn pile, but it had vanished. Following the gouges in the mud left by its removal, I located it halfway across the field, hands outstretched, as if it intended to return to its original spot. The rainy night should have deterred anyone from venturing into the muddy fields, yet the scarecrow had moved. I tied it back to the tractor, determined not to let it best me. That night, my brothers and I planned a cookout in the backyard, an event to commemorate my uncle's memory. We lit a fire and drank his beer, but something was amiss. The scarecrow had reappeared near its pole, untouched by the flames. My brothers were dismissive, claiming no knowledge of its movements. Irritated and unnerved, I retrieved it once more, tying it to the tractor and driving it back to the house. Later that evening, I decided to check on it again. The scarecrow had vanished from the burn pile once more, and this time, my patience wore thin. I secured it, determined to defeat whatever force was toying with me. But the events that followed would spiral into pure nightmare fuel. As the night wore on, I awoke to the sound of scratching coming from the wall behind my makeshift bed. My heart pounded as I dismissed it as a small animal, but sleep remained elusive. Morning light revealed a gruesome sight. A human torso, skeletal and blackened, lay beneath the living room window. Ash marked its path from the fire pit to where it rested. Further inspection led to the discovery of the rest of the skeleton. The feet charred in the pit. The skull bore evidence of a savage blow just above the ear. We concluded that my uncle had killed his neighbor and used the victim's remains as a framework for the scarecrow, hiding his crime in plain sight. The notion of calling the police loomed, but we could offer no explanation for why we had dragged half of the skeleton to the house. In the end, my brother disposed of the remains in a distant lake. The mystery of who or what had been moving the scarecrow and the dreadful truth it had concealed still haunts my dreams. Was it the restless spirit of my uncle, desperate to keep his crime hidden? Or perhaps the vengeful ghost of the dead neighbor, determined to reveal the truth? I may never know. Thanks for joining us on this spine-tingling journey at Documented Creeps. If you crave more eerie tales, real-life encounters, and mysteries that defy explanation, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe.